This is the An Jia Bao 40mm padlock. It's a disc detainer. It has 5 discs. This one's also center tensioning. Should still be able to pick it with a front tensioning pick. So we have our sparrows. Let's get started by rotating everything full clockwise. And we do need a little bit of a space for this one, so I'm going to put 2 spacers on there. So we grab just that first disc, get my picking tip free, and then let's get our tip all the way to the back. I like to go all the way to the back just because it's easier for me to, I think, count. Technically, binding happens best closest to where you're tensioning to start with, but with these cheaper disc detainer, lower quality disc detainer locks, you can get away with a lot. And one of the things you can get away with is simply applying enough tension to bind it even if you're far away. So let's find disc 5. The Zarker has more space, or sorry, the An Jia Bao has more space between the discs than the Zarker. The discs themselves are smaller. Moved a little bit and then kind of hit a brick wall, so we're going to move on. 4. It's very easy to slip right past them. 4 is definitely solid. Not going to push on it. 3 is solid. You could also theoretically come all the way out like this. And assuming you're biting in good, you know that the first disc you run into is 2 then. 2 is binding. Gonna give it a little bit of, it's actually bound up pretty hard. Gonna lighten my tension. There we go. It's moving. And now we hit a brick wall. Gonna go back up on that tension again, just to make it easier to find discs as I go. There's 3. 4 and 5. Make sure my tension is good. Now, one of the benefits of a disc detainer too is you can drop tension during the pick. Like, that's completely no tension. Apply tension again. The discs shouldn't move provided your picking tip isn't touching them or anything else isn't touching them. And you're more than able to essentially have your tip sitting there while you resituate your tensioner. None of the discs should have moved when you did that, so 5, 4, 3, 'I think we may have everything set, so I'm going to go to 3 here. 2 ways to do that. Again, you could start on 5, 4, and 3. Or you can come all the way up. And you know that the first one you crash into is 2. And then the next one you crash into is 3. So just let me get situated on 3 here. Double check 4 and 5. Put 3. Another benefit of disc detainers too is you can test both sides of the discs as you go. So for example, we're all the way down now, and I've been, for example, testing this side of disc 5, right? And I know it's pretty solid, it doesn't want to move. I can also come down, touch the other side of the disc, and it doesn't want to move back. Pretty good indication that it's set. 4, and then 3. Then we counter rotate. I get on 3 pretty good though. There's 3. And it's hard to see, so I'll take my pick out and show you, but it did open up back there. So a little bit of an explainer as I went that time, I think, too, just to kind of talk myself through it as well as anybody who's mildly interested in it. They are a definite adjustment from pin tumbler locks. So if you're very used to picking pin tumbler or dimple locks, you kind of have to relearn how to pick from the start using a tool like this so that you can feel the discs as you go. You have to get really used to essentially navigating this tip in there in as straight of a manner as possible. So when you're actually on the lock and you come, in and out like this, it's really easy, especially on the Sparrows, in my opinion, since it doesn't sit very flat to a lot of lock faces. It's very easy to kind of get a little bit of angle or a tilt. And those discs can be, very thin, 1 millimeter, 0.5 millimeter, somewhere in there. And if you get a little bit off angle, then the position of that tip changes. So it's kind of hard to see on this lock, but I'll try to get in there with the light. And then maybe we'll zoom in on it. Even this light likes to show the lock face more than it does the actual disc in there. But if you actually get in there and look, maybe it's best to show it with a flag, for example. The actual discs that you're rotating are very thin. So you can see there's disc 2 right behind disc 1 there. And there's, if I set them off kilter like that and I touch disc 2. So here's the outside of disc 1, outside of disc 2. It's not even the thickness of this flag. The flag is still sticking out on 1 there. So they're thin. They're especially thin in this lock. There's always a spacer between them so that when you move one, it moves freely the other one. But disc 2, for example, and this actually is a good example as the lock is open for you to see how this is how much play there is in a set disc. They'll move a little bit, and that's how you can kind of tell they're set. You'll hit a wall when you rotate it. For example, you'll be pushing and you'll hit this wall. And set discs are always going to have that kind of wall that you hit. When you get a binding disc, you'll push on it and it'll get like a spongy feeling in your picking tip. You'll feel it, you'll twist and it'll feel kind of spongy or like it's dragging a little bit if you don't have it. So if you have high tension, you'll feel, a spongy feeling. If you have a little bit lower tension, you'll feel the disc drag as it moves. And then there's also non-binding discs, which would just freely rotate. So if we, close this back up, or at least make it so that we can close it back up, now I can freely rotate discs. And none of them are binding. There's no tension being applied to it, so it's easy to freely rotate any of these discs. So what your pick tip's actually doing in there is manipulating the discs like this. You can do it with a flag. It's something I'm probably going to spend some time learning how to do just for fun, but you can rotate them with flags. But so a non-binding disc is going to be just like this. It's going to move. And then when it binds, when you apply tension and the sidebar is pushing on the disc, it's going to feel spongy as you push on it. And then once it sets, it kind of clicks into place really hard. On more complicated locks that we'll almost certainly be picking on this channel later, there are, discs that have false gates cut into them, or even more complicated mechanisms. But when you have false gates, for example, any false gate, it's going to have, I think it's called the wobble test, but when you go back and forth, a false gate has a much different feel to it than a true gate, and that's something you learn as you pick as well. So the basics of disc detainer locks is literally just getting these things lined up. So what I'm doing with that tip as I'm in there is just rotating these discs. I'm trying to find the ones that are spongy feeling when I push on them, and then I push on them until they go solid, and they got that little bit of back and forth play that you can feel. And essentially in this lock, the way it was set up is I only had to move 3 of the discs. When I went full clockwise, discs 3 and 4 were already, fully set. One of them did come loose at one point during the pick, and I kind of bumped it off place, and we had to push it back in. So that's definitely a possibility that just because it's in the true gate, if it's not actually, if that sidebar is not pushing in it very hard, it can wobble loose, especially if I break free, or like when I was showing I was moving the tensioner around. I may have bumped it during that process. Any one of those things can happen, but typically all you have to do, maintain tension and find binding discs that way. It is a learning experience, but one that I hope you'll find enjoyable. Once again, was the An Jia Bao 40mm, and I will see you guys later.